So today we're going to talk about succulents and growing succulents in the greenhouse. Now succulents tend to come from dry areas of the world. That's why they're succulent, they're storing the water because it's in short supply. So that means in the UK, if we try and grow these outside, we've got a problem because they're not used to the damp conditions we have. So by growing them inside a greenhouse, we can have a drier atmosphere and the succulents can thrive. That doesn't mean they don't want any water, but we can water them more sparingly and produce a lovely display. So we've got some succulent displays here, look very nice in their terracotta pots. You can put them outside in the summertime and when it's not too wet, but then bring them back in the autumn time, put them in the greenhouse where they're going to be protected from the winter and the wet of the winter. Tend to be fairly frost hardy generally, so you don't need to worry too much about that. You can store them in a cold greenhouse or a cold frame over the winter time. So you can see lots of different options in terms of displaying the succulents. Got that one there, magnificent succulent in its pot there, nice terracotta pots. But you can try and do things a little bit differently as well. An old seed tray planted up with succulents, that looks great. Makes a feature, and you can perhaps have that out maybe on the patio or maybe on a bench or a table in the summertime. Makes a lovely display. Or how about a brick? We use these when we exhibit because our seed tray shelves are very strong, so we put a couple of bricks on there just to show how sturdy they are. But not any old brick, a brick with succulents we're growing outside. And we bought these from a DIY store, so they're bricks with a hole in the centre. So we plugged the bottom with, I think, some compost, like wool compost, and then put the succulents in there. And you can see they're really thriving. This one's a more standard brick. This one's a little bit more of a challenge because we had to drill it to get some drainage in there, and also we had to get the frog in the brick a little bit deeper, so there was some ability for the succulents to grow in there. So what we're going to do today is we're going to plant a couple of succulents into this rusty container, which looks quite artistic. So I've got a couple of succulents which I'll just go and grab, and then we're going to pot them up. So I've got this succulent here, and I've got this one that's in a terracotta pot already, but I don't know who planted that, but it's sunk rather, so we're going to transplant that. So clever trick, we've got a couple of pots inside the rusty one, and that means we can pot into these and then drop them in. That's great because we can have perhaps 3 or 4 plants, and as they're looking really good, we can take them out and swap them over, so it makes much more interesting. So pop that to one side, and what we need to do first of all is have some compost mixed up. So we're going to have a mix of compost. This has got some horticultural sand in it already and some sharp grit, because we want these to be really well drained. They're not used to a soggy compost. So we're going to mix that together. Going to go for probably, I would say, almost a 50-50 mix. Different people will tell you different things. In my experience, as long as there's plenty of drainage in there, then the plants will still thrive. They're great in a greenhouse or a cold frame. So we'll get that mixed in, and then I'm going to put some in the bottom. I'm going for the grittier ones, or the less compost to start off with, so you've got good drainage at the bottom. And then we're going to just transplant. So I'm just going to take this one out of here. And I'm going to take off just the very bottom. This is quite a wet compost in there, so I'm going to take that off and I'm going to transplant it. And I'm just going to check for height. Just want a little bit more compost in there. So it gets a little bit tricky because it's a loose compost, it doesn't hold together very firmly. There we are. Just going to fill in a bit around the edges. And there we go. What you can do if you want to is just get the grit on its own and just sprinkle that around the edge of the plant, and that makes it look a bit more appealing. It also means that when you water it, you're not washing away any of the compost, and maybe it looks a bit more like it would do in its native environment. So there's one, and then we've got the other one here. It's going to be a little bit more tricky to get this one out. Get as much as I can out. Again, I'm just going to need to put a bit more compost in there, I think. Obviously we want it to be fairly high in the pot so that we can see it. Try not to get too blown away. A blustery day in Northamptonshire. See the benefit for the plants of being inside a greenhouse on a day like this, protecting them from the wind and the rain that's forecast to come a bit later. So we potted that one up, and we'll just put a bit of grit just on the top just to make it look nice. And then we can pop it into our outer pot. 2 succulents in the pot, and that looks a nice display. So succulents in a greenhouse. We'll water these sparingly. We'll allow them to dry out almost so they're really dry, and then water them again. They want that drying cycle to help them to grow. They don't want to be too wet, but you can't just leave them and never water them. They do have to have some regular watering. So succulents in the greenhouse.